Godzilla vs. the Avengers is one of those matchups that you'd make as a kid if you had a whole bunch of toys together. And admittedly, it's awesome. It's something that's been replicated in the comics. It's happening again as we speak in said comics. And stacked that on top of the fact that the Avengers Doomsday cast has officially been revealed for the most part. And seeing as how I'm a Godzilla power scaler, I figured that I would dive into this matchup based on their most culturally relevant iterations, being the Godzilla from the MonsterVerse and the Avengers from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As we know, the Avengers have gone through many eras in this continuity already, which is why I'm going to be splitting the video into 3 parts. Firstly, I will examine how Godzilla would do against the Phase 1 to 2 Avengers, how he would do against the Avengers as seen in Infinity War and Endgame, and for the last part, I will examine how the King of the Monsters would do currently against the most recent iteration of the Avengers post-Endgame. You guys seem to like the Avengers MCU content, and I haven't done Godzilla content in a while now, so this is a pretty good opportunity for me to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. It's actually 3 birds with 1 stone because it gives me the opportunity to talk about the most recent scaling chains that are pretty prevalent in the MCU, because you might be surprised. So if you think that you already know what I'm gonna say, I promise you don't, because I have never talked about the current MCU scaling chain or some of the stuff that the higher tiers would scale to as of right now. So I think this is gonna be a pretty good video, and if it sounds interesting to you, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and it's a goal that I think we can realistically hit by the end of the year. We post long formatted videos such as this, tons of shorts, and we even stream multiple times a week. I'll sit here right here every 5 seconds. No, I'm not checking fucking Foxy. I'm not checking Foxy, bro. He's not active. Don't even try to troll. 1 Mississippi. Every 5 seconds, Who said check Foxy, bro? Who said check Foxy? So considering that a subscription is free, you're gonna be getting a lot of content out of me. So with that shameless self-promo out of the way, and I do mean shameless, subscribe. Let's go over the iterations of Earth's mightiest heroes to see if any of them stand a chance against the King of the Monsters. I'm gonna go over Godzilla first, and I'm gonna keep his scaling pretty quick due to the sheer amount of MCU power scaling that we're gonna be doing in today's video. But Godzilla at this particular moment in time is consistently anywhere between large planetary to even dwarf star level. And I'm gonna just give you the current straightforward scaling chain. As for starters, Godzilla's Hollow Earth atomic breath drill has been calculated to be in those planetary ranges by itself, with the attack potency mostly drawing from the fact that he didn't simply drill into the planet, but he also destroyed everything that was in his path to a subatomic level, which drastically bumps up the feat to where if you just said it was he drilled through the planet for a minute. Godzilla can later on endure Mechagodzilla's proton scream point blank while already being exhausted and at best being at 50% of his normal power. This is notable as, according to an inverse guide, the yield of the proton scream is around a couple thousand times more potent than the atomic breath that Godzilla yielded to blast through the planet that Apex observed, which gets the blast that Mechagodzilla hit Godzilla with to large planet level. And Godzilla in this weakened state can not only endure it, but he also proves strong enough to stalemate the beam, momentarily forcing MG to use more of his Hollow Earth energy storage to bump up the potency of the blast to overpower this weakened Godzilla. The dwarf star level metrics come from the fact that earlier in the film, it stated that his resting energy is comparable to the entirety of the Hollow Earth's energy output. In order to find a consistent gauge of power to this construct, we need no look further than the Monarch Legacy of Monsters television show, in which we know that small pockets of the stuff can exert energy roughly in the pentatons of power, which is around multi-continental. So just taking that value and upscaling it for the holographic simulation of the construct, and it's been founded that the entirety of the Hollow Earth would exert energy in the dwarf star level ranges, and Godzilla would scale in a state that's much weaker than his current base. Like, this is not even evolved Godzilla, this is just regular old Godzilla. I'm gonna keep the AP scaling around here for the moment because I think right now going into it any deeper would be something that's best saved for the later ends of this video. As for speed anyways, now Godzilla is surprisingly fast, being able to blitz and overwhelm Kong while actually serious. Keep in mind this is the same ape who can react to the atomic breath, which is composed of Sharingan radiation, granting Kong relativistic to even faster than light combat speeds and reaction times. And Godzilla, while actually being enraged, can blitz and overwhelm this same 8th wonder of the world, granting Godzilla anywhere between relativistic plus to FTL combat speeds and reaction times, on top of his large planetary to dwarf star level attack potency. So how would the Avengers from phases 1 to 2 compare? And honestly, they're cooked, with most of the team being non-factors and are only real heavy hitters during this time period, being Iron Man in his toughest suits, Thor, Vision, and the Incredible Hulk. And as for early MCU attack potency, they would only really scale to Thor's hammer, as Hulk can endure blows from it, and Iron Man can go toe-to-toe with him. And then you have Vision and Thor, who are shown to be in the same ballpark, with the game being just downscaling the Incredible Hulk. And anyway, this would grant these guys at best moon level attack potency, as Mjolnir upscales Rocket's guns that can moon bust. As we have Rocket Raccoon verbally conceding to the spot that Thor's hammer was constructed to be the place that makes the best weapons in the universe. So Thor's weapons would just upscale Rocket's inherently, and a lot of the mid-tier or high-tier Avengers have scaling to it in one way, shape, or form. And as for speed, Thor is shown to be a light timer, and so is Captain America if I remember correctly. And obviously the team is shown to be comparable in terms of speed, as they work pretty competently together as a team, so they would have to scale to one another. And in terms of just straight up attack speed, they, Iron Man shoots light beams, so, while they are fast enough to potentially tag Godzilla, they have no real hope of hurting the King of the Monsters, as the difference in AP is just so drastic that they just cannot cause any meaningful damage to him. Realistically speaking here, one nuclear pulse would be enough to deal with all of these guys. So Godzilla would move on to the climax of the Infinity Saga, where he'd have to deal with new members of the team, even stronger OG members, as well as a couple of wild cards who could potentially turn the tides in their favor. But before that, I'd like to share the spotlight with today's sponsor being Beasties Collectibles. These guys are a repeat sponsor in the channel, and they've helped me out numerous times here on the channel, so they're a pretty trusted ally. And I think they'd help you out too, because seeing as how you click on the video, you might be interested in the Godzilla IP. But as a Godzilla fan, you might know how hard it is to get figures, especially for affordable prices. But with today's sponsor, you don't have to worry about any of that, as today's sponsor has tons of Japanese Godzilla products, and they're able to ship it out to you for an affordable price. I'm a big fan of the Bandai Vinyl series, and these guys were able to hook me up with the movie Monster series Space Godzilla. And man, if you think that he looks good on the camera, I promise you he feels way better in person. And this figure is incredible. It's a lot more accurate than the previous iterations of this mode. And if you're interested, you can get this figure and a whole bunch of other figures on top of that. And if you're not interested in just Godzilla, they have Gamera, Ultraman, and even a bunch of kaiju based anime merchandise. And hey, these guys also recently restocked in movie Monster series Godzilla 2000, as well as Godzilla 1968. So if you'd find yourself to be interested in any of these figures, I implore you to click the first link in the description down below, as it takes you right to their site. And on top of that, whatever you buy, be sure to put in code Goji-Chronic 5, as it saves you 5% on your next purchase. Thanks BCE's Collectibles for sponsoring today's video. But with that being said, let's find out how Godzilla would stack up against the Phase 3 Avengers. But firstly, I want to cover all of the core Avengers, as they're stronger, firstly, and there's a lot of new characters who scale roughly relative to some of the high tiers, as one of them scales to Cull Obsidian, and the other one can, just one-shot Leviathans, which is shown to be like a Hulk level feat. But in terms of the core Avengers, we have Post-Awakened Thor, who's around 10 times stronger than he was in Phase 1 to 2, as in the OG film it takes him around 10 blows to crack through the Rainbow Bridge, whereas in Thor Ragnarok, his casual lightning strikes are shown capable of producing the same effect. So I think if I were to be really generous, Thor would scale into those small planetary ranges by the end of Phase 3, because he upscales weapons at least 10 times over that in themselves upscale weapons that can blow up entire moons. And then on top of that, he gets even stronger in Infinity War, and then he gets stronger again in Endgame. Yeah, Fat Thor is stronger than Infinity War Thor. So maybe he would get into those small planetary plus ranges now that I think about it. And then you have the Hulk, who is shown to be stronger than Thor during the events of Ragnarok, and he's still arguably stronger than him during the two last Avengers films, as he was able to box with Thanos, and apparently due to some new, Kevin Feige retcons, Thanos actually was pushed to use the Power Stone during his fight against the Incredible Hulk. So maybe the Hulk will be planetary, if anything, because this is the guy who's ragdolling the strongest version of Thor. And then we have worthy Captain America, who's a real sleeper in my opinion, as of the main three Avengers, he just blatantly has the best performance against the Mad Titan, and that would include, the strongest version of Thor up to this point. And I suppose Iron Man would fall into this range of AP as well, due to his showing of drawing blood from Thanos as well. That's something that Cap was shown to be able to do, so that would firmly put him in that tier of power as well. So as it turns out, a lot of the mid-tier Avengers are in those small planetary ranges, so that should open the door for me to be able to go into the top 3 strongest, as of Infinity War. And yeah, I'm not really sure of the order, but I know all three of these guys upscale Thor. Wanda Maximoff. I know a lot of people, they hate Wanda fans, but she's strong. What can I say? She was literally gonna beat Thanos. Captain Marvel, a character who was no-selling Thanos' base blows, and pushed the Mad Titan to utilize much more of the Power Stone than he did against the Hulk, firmly putting her against most of the Avengers. And, you know, we have Doctor Strange, this guy who was literally able to 1v1 box with a version of Thanos with multiple Infinity Stones up to this point. So yeah, all three of these guys are firmly above most of the mid-tiers, so how strong are they exactly? Starting with Captain Marvel, and her AP is probably the most broad to scale, because during phases 3, she only has like 2 appearances, but she'd be above pretty much everyone, right? As a baseline for her attack potency, she would probably be in those, you know, higher ends of small planetary to maybe even planetary, as she has the best physical performance, you know, compared to any other Avenger, literally bullying Thanos into submission and forcing him to utilize the Power Stone, just to put her on the sideline for a brief moment because, quote, she's just that strong. So using all of that and stacking that on top of the fact that the actress of Captain Marvel has stated that this is a character that can move planets, I don't really feel that bad when I say that Captain Marvel during this time period would probably reach those planetary ends of power. But how about Doctor Strange? And well, that's another easy one because all of his scaling comes from his performance against Thanos. We know that he's a glass cannon because, you know, he's a human, what can I say? But he can, you know, use his magic to create shields to, you know, help his durability a bit. But in terms of the attack potency of his magic, he is able to disperse Thanos' black hole, which comes out to around large planetary. He's also the most hacksy Avenger at this time period, being able to, you know what is he not able to do? That's probably a better question. Anything you can think of, Strange can probably do it. But once again, he needs time to, you know, really execute his spells, and if you grab him, it's kind of over because he is a human in terms of durability. But moving on to Wanda, who's the strongest at this particular moment in time, something that's confirmed by the Russo brothers themselves, or Kevin Feige. It was one of those guys who said that she was the biggest threat to Thanos on the field. I kind of forget. But for her attack potency, she would probably be in those planetary ranges, as with her magic, she was just, you know, torturing Thanos for fun. She was also shown capable of stalemating a Thanos with most of the Infinity Stones during the events of Infinity War. So via upscaling Doctor Strange, she would probably get into those large planetary ranges with her magic, as she just upscales Strange in his entirety. So as we can see, the Avengers have really gotten quite the buff. We have a lot of the characters now finally reaching those planetary ranges, with a couple of them even getting up to large planetary. And with heavy hitters such as Doctor Strange and Wanda Maximoff, they're not very lacking in terms of hacks either. So how would Godzilla perform during this phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? I think he'd be fine though, unfortunately, because he's just that strong. I didn't really go into the extent of his attack potency, but let me go into that now. As we know, a base Godzilla would scale anywhere between large planetary to dwarf star level, and then in GXK, he absorbs a source of energy that stayed verbatim to be the biggest energy source on the planet, upscaling Timeless layer here above the entirety of the Hollow Earth. So Godzilla just gets another dwarf star level amp on top of his base, causing him to evolve and become 2 times stronger than he was initially. And then Godzilla has that supercharged state in his back pocket, which is a state that makes him so powerful that he starts to literally leak his energy. This is important because the evolved transformation is said to grant Godzilla a 20 times increased energy, holding capacity. So the fact that Godzilla was leaking out his power during this supercharged state tells us that he was utilizing that to its fullest, meaning that Godzilla, while supercharged, would be 20 times above that dwarf star level metric that we lined up for him earlier. So unfortunately, none of the main mid tiers are going to do anything relevant. They're just too weak to really injure him. And from there, the team would have to rely on their hacksmongers such as Wanda and Doctor Strange. And once again, Doctor Strange needs time to, cast his spells. And if he just throws Godzilla in the mirror dimension, there's a pretty good likelihood he could just punch out of it, because Godzilla should be far stronger than whatever slight percentage of the Power Stone that Thanos used to punch out of it himself. I think the only one who could actually press him is probably Wanda because of her super hacks. But once again, she's a glass cannon and he could just nuclear pulse her, and that would force her to be on the defensive end for a majority of a confrontation situation. And with that being said, Godzilla would just have to find himself moving on to the most recent end of Avengers power scaling. When talking about who makes up the current Avengers, it can be pretty confusing, but simply I'm just going to use everyone that you'd expect except for Iron Man, Cap, and Wanda, as Wanda's a bad guy and the two are just done, as of right now anyways. So that just leaves us with some new heavy hitters, being Shang-Chi, who is said to be comparable to current Hulk, and Thor, who in themselves scale to Namor according to the director of Black Panther 2, which is notable as Namor can just simply punch through substances stated to be relative to vibranium and durability, firmly putting all of these guys post Endgame above Thanos in terms of sheer physicals, as he needed the Uru blade to cut through the stuff over time, while current Hulk and Thor scale to characters who can just punch through the stuff. So yeah, it's not that far-fetched seeing as how both parties were seen training post Endgame, so just keep that in mind. But I would say that all of the heavy hitters would be deeper into those planetary ranges as they just upscale Thanos. Potentially they just upscale him 10 times over if you think that they can just one-shot vibranium. But I want to move into a new MCU scaling chain, as we're going to have to talk about Captain Marvel, who has a really good feat of reigniting a star. I want to note that she did not believe she could perform this feat prior to her actually doing it, so this would probably not scale to her phase 3 self, hence why I didn't mention it earlier. But this feat, comes out to anywhere between large planet to dwarf star level. So honestly, with all the mid-tiers firmly getting into those planetary ranges, with Captain Marvel cementing herself as the strongest Avenger as of now, with her having a large planet to dwarf star level feat, so yeah, Godzilla just slams still, he's just that strong. Like, when you have characters that are just reaching those dwarf star level ranges, and then you put them up against a character who upscales that same level of power like 20 times over, like, what do you want me to say? Godzilla just beats them. But I hope that I have illustrated the fact that this current Avengers team is perhaps the strongest you've ever seen in the MCU. But despite the new buffs, they just don't find themselves stacking up to the King of the Monsters. So like in the comic books, if these two parties were to ever meet, Godzilla would find himself winning more times than not. As today's winner is Godzilla, the King of the Monsters. Also, I want to point out that I've been pretty generous to the MCU in terms of power scaling, so I don't want to hear anyone use wanked high-end calcs for some of these feats. Like, I'm specifically talking about, the star feat and the black hole feat, because, considering we don't even know if this is a black hole to begin with, and we don't even know what size the star is in this instance right here, appealing to such high ends is not really that good, especially when they're not consistent to begin with. And hey, if we want to just throw consistency out the window, let's just bring in the Monarch Legacy of Monster statements that say that the Hollow Earth's energy output is comparable to supermassive black holes, or the GVK novel statements that say that the Hollow Earth has boundless infinite energy that Godzilla would upscale in base. So for that vocal minority you guys who likes to assert that everyone in the MCU is like multi-solar system level, I promise you we can play the same stupid games with Godzilla. I scaled most of the characters to planetary pretty firmly, so I don't want to hear anyone say that I downplayed the verse for the billionth time. But hey, if you really disagree with me that much, then who am I to stop you? Be sure to tell me whatever you want in the comments down below. But hey, if you agree with me, be sure to let me know, because it tells me that you like the content, and it gives me a pretty good idea of the type of stuff you want to see on the channel. So if you want to help me out, then be sure to engage. But with that being said, I'm gonna make my leave, as I'll see you guys next week. But until then, stay big, G fans.